Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I have to tell you something, people. I started a new side business, my new PR company, Creative Stupidity PR. Now, here's the deal. I have one client so far, Jason Aldean's drummer, Rich Redmond, and in just a month and a half, I've placed him on 7 podcasts, got him an acting agent out here, got his blue verification on Twitter, and last week he was on Nashville Today. So if you're looking to get your product known, to get on podcasts, if you're an actor, you want more viability, visibility, whatever the term is, hit me up, Cooper at coopertalk.net. I was going to call it Cooper Talk PR, but that's too much Cooper Talk stuff, so it's Creative Stupidity PR. So if you're looking for something, people, hit me up, and I will take care of you. Anyway, we have a great guest. It's funny, I had to cancel my guest last week because I got a last-minute booking for a commercial, so I canceled them, and then 3 hours later, I get a message that says, the director cut my scene, so I was screwed. And then I had him booked on Friday, and his girlfriend got sick. So we've been going back and forth, but I'm glad to have him on. And I got to talk to him about the 4-octave stuff. We'll go into that. But my guest is Tony Harnell. How you doing?
I'm good, Steve. How are you doing?
Good.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm glad we got in touch.
Finally worked it out.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I knew of you, and then I saw a picture on Facebook of you with a guy named Reggie Wu, who went to my high school. And you and him and John Corabi were at some concert together or something. Yeah,
we did the Monsters of Rock cruise together, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I said, I got to hit this guy up. I said, because, he's not from Cherry Hill, but he's got a Cherry Hill connection, so it's all good.
Yeah, I actually have a really weird Philadelphia connection. I moved to New York when I was really young. I just fresh out of high school, and I finished high school early. So I got my diploma from when I was 16, actually. So I worked for a little bit, and then my mom was an opera singer. She was already living in New York, so my grandparents shipped me out here, and ended up, after going to college for 6 months, I started singing a lot more, and this guitar player heard me. And all of a sudden, I found myself in a professional band at 17 down in Philadelphia, working 4 or 5 nights a week. And that's kind of where I, started performing for the first time, and just so happened to be down there. So I cut my teeth, so to speak, on the Philadelphia, South Jersey rock circuit. And I go very far back with guys like Corabi and Reggie Wu and the Cinderella guys, Tom Kiefer, and all these people, just from those days, of starting out down there. So it's kind of a weird connection. But yeah, Reggie and I go way back to probably 1980 or 82 or something. Yeah.
Well, that's funny because we're around the same age. What was the band?
Well, probably not anything you'd heard of, but the first one that I joined when I went down there was called Castleton. And that was with a guy named Mark Esky, who went on to form a band called Network. And the drummer was Bob Duane, who went on to be, now he's in a band I think called Stone, but he had been kicking around the circuit in a bunch of different bands. And then we did another band together down there called Precious Metal, and another one I think even after that. And we did, the Freddie Baker circuit, and we did all that stuff down there. So none of them really took off in a big way, but it led to other things, and I got a lot out of it, by being a kid playing 4 nights a week and playing a lot of, 3 sets a night, was very, very good for me. So I took that with me back to New York and kept going.
Now you were born in San Diego, and you said your mom was an opera singer. So did you know at a young, how did you find out you could sing? And I did some research, Jimmy, because people have said about you a 4-octave voice, which you look at the list of the people who have it, there's not a lot who have it, who are professional singers. But how did you know you could sing? And was it because your mom was an opera singer? Did you always want to sing as a kid? Or was it just you sang one time in school and everyone went, holy crap, that kid's got pipes? How did you parlay into the singing?
I don't know. I was always interested in music, and my mom, thankfully, not only was I exposed to opera, which was great, now I look back on it, and you know, I might have actually hated it at the time, but I think it was really good for me to be exposed to classical music to that, you know, at that level. But she was a big pop music fan and folk music, and you know, we're talking about, you know, the '60s and early '70s and mid '70s, and so she was. A lot of what was being played in the house was not opera. So if she wasn't warming up or rehearsing or playing piano and singing and, you know, practicing for a new opera that she was doing, all I heard was, you know, the Beatles, you know, Beatles, Stones, you know, folk music, you know, Judy Collins and Seals and Crofts. And I mean, I can just go on and on and on, just Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix. My aunt was a little younger. My aunt was almost 2 years younger, so she'd be coming over with the Zeppelin records and the Creedence Clearwater and the Three Dog Night stuff, you know. But I got a taste of all this stuff, and so from a young age, it was you know, constantly being played, and that was a big thing for me. And then of course the radio, which, you know, back then the radio was awesome until not very long ago. I mean, it's still great in a different way. It's just that, you know, you could get into a car and it was just so great. So,
you know, it's funny you say that about the radio, is because I've noticed this too, that you're right. Radio used to be amazing, but now living in LA, and this is the God's honest truth, sometimes I feel like classic rock, which used to be, you know, as you say, back in the day, was across the board. Now, and this is no lie, and people will agree with me when I post it and tweet about it, in LA, at any moment of time, and that's a little exaggeration, you can switch a station. You'll either hear AC/DC and Guns N' Roses, both bands I love, but it's like they just constantly play it. There used to be so much variety in radio when we were younger that you could sit there and you could hear, you know, it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to hear Queen in the next hour. You know, it'd be like, okay, I'm going to hear, as you said, you know, all these different bands. You're like, holy crap, I can hear the Kinks, you know?
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I can hear a song, you know, someone's playing a classic rock station or something, and I'm in a car, because I don't listen to the radio unless I'm in a car. I don't turn it on at home. So it's always in a car, and if I'm driving or someone else is driving, and you know, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this. A song will pop on. It could be any kind of song, and for me, I immediately get a memory. It's usually a very distinct memory of some kind associated with a particular track. So I remember when I was a kid and I first started to drive, that's when I really started to, you know, absorb the radio even more than ever before, because I was driving, you know, so I was 16 years old, my first car, and the radio was on constantly. And I could hear everything from a, you know, Steely Dan track, you know, like Peg or something would come on, and then in the next instant it might be Van Halen, and then, you know, after that it might be Cheap Trick, or then maybe the Little River Band, you know, Reminiscing, you know, and all these great 70s tracks would come on, and or an Elton John song. And so there are very, very funny moments where a song will pop up, and I have a very, very specific memory of turning a corner, you know, at a beach somewhere in San Diego at the moment that song was on. It must have been just like that, you know. So I got off the beaten path there a little bit with your question, but I think that, you know, growing up the way that I did, and being exposed to music and film and art from a young age, I just absorbed it so deeply. And then I had idols from a very young age, and I remember very clearly being that Glenn Campbell became such a big star when I was very young and very impressionable. He had a TV show called the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour, and I just flipped out over him. I just, for whatever reason, at 4 or 5 or 6 years old, it was like he was everything to me. He was this great singer. I thought he looked cool. He played guitar amazingly well. To me, I wasn't into country music, and I didn't see him really as a country artist. I just kind of saw him as some kind of crossover thing that had a, you know, guy with a great voice. And I started singing his songs a lot. And I had every record. Every time we went to the record store or anywhere they sold records, I wanted a Glenn Campbell record. So I had every album, and I absorbed those songs like really like a sponge and would sing them. And so my grandmother and my mom noticed that I could sing on key, and they started to invite people over, and they'd make me sing at parties and get-togethers and different things like that. So he was kind of the first one that I like just absolutely would sit for hours and listen to. And I don't know any kid that's like 5 or 6 years old that just sits and listens to records and absorbs music the way that I did at such a young age. And that's what I was doing. If I wasn't out playing, which I was a lot, with my friends, I was inside absorbing music. I was absorbing this stuff. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't have any aspirations really of, I took some guitar lessons and so forth. But it wasn't like at 5 years old, everyone was going, this kid's going to be a singer. There was none of that going on. It was just, oh, look, he's got some talent, you know. But everybody in my family sang. My mom sang, my aunt sang, my grandmother sang, my dad played piano, and he was a photographer. He just played for fun. So to me, singing, and singing well, so they told me, was not any great accomplishment. I didn't see it as anything other than, well, okay, so I can sing, my mom can sing, I guess we can all sing. It's a big deal, you know. It wasn't until later that I guess when I was, more in my early driving years and driving my car around, that I had my first 8-track player, and I started listening to hard rock, and metal.
Remember 8-tracks? Oh my God, I remember the thing that pissed me off about 8-tracks was my brother had a Camaro, and he had Billy Joel the Stranger, Steely Dan, and Boston, I believe, on 8-track. And the only thing, 8-tracks were great, but what always pissed me off was, like, you'd be listening to a song, and you'd be getting into it, and then some songs, they would switch in the middle of the track.
I kind of do vaguely. What I remember more than that used to upset me more than that would be pulling the thing out and having tape stick inside the player. You know,
yeah, it's not like the cassette when you use the pencil and the eraser to twist it. The 8-track, you're screwed.
Yeah, once that was done, you were done, and you had to go get a new one. But no, my first 8 tracks were things like, Judas Priest, Stained Class, and 2112 by Rush, and because that's just when I happened to get my first car, so that's what I went and bought. But once I started getting into that stuff, I surfed a lot and I skateboarded a lot. I was a professional skateboarder when I was 14 and 15 years old, and so most of my time was spent surfing and skateboarding. So on the way to the beach or on the way to the skate park or wherever I was going, I had a motorcycle as well. I would be blasting this stuff and singing. I would just automatically start singing to it, and I just started getting better and better. I kind of sensed that I was singing well, but I wasn't sure until I don't remember exactly when it was, but at some point along the way, somebody noticed. And people started to comment about it, and I thought, well, this is, interesting. And then the final story I'll tell you, which is really when it all kind of came together, was when I moved to New York finally. My dad drove my car out, and I flew out, and my surfboard was in the back of the car, and I thought, well, I'll try to continue this weird lifestyle somehow in New York and find a beach, and, but I moved to Astoria, Queens, which is a strange place to live when you've been living on the beach or surfing in San Diego your whole life. And driving my car around, and I'm screaming to Judas Priest and Zeppelin and all this kind of stuff. And one day I'm at a stop sign, and these 2 long-haired guys dressed in black leather, start running towards my car. They go, stop, stop. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to get killed right now. I'm dead, I'm locking the door, I'm rolling the window up, and they're like, no, like, it's fine, it's fine. I'm like, okay, what? And they're like, are you the guy that's been driving through the neighborhood singing? And I'm like, oh, you heard me? Like, you can hear me? Because it was summertime, I guess my windows were down sometimes. Yeah, we heard you, we've been looking for you. So that led to, can you come rehearse with us on Saturday? And, there'll be beer there, and whatever the story was. And I had never been in a rehearsal room before, had never played with a band or anything. So I thought, yeah, that'll be fun. Why not? So I went down and I did that, and that was the moment where everything changed. I had a scholarship. I was in college at 17. I had a full photography scholarship. That's what I was going to do, follow my dad's footsteps and be a photographer. And that one rehearsal just changed the whole path. And little by little, as I went through and eventually joined that band, didn't stay in it for very long because when I realized that's what I wanted to do, I went to my college and said, I got to get out of here and do music. And so I quickly just started to get better and better. And I just went from band to band to band and just kept looking for better and better bands. And probably spent about 3 years from 17 until 21. I would guess I was in about 15 different bands in that short period of time, just because if a better band came along, I would jump to that one because I wanted to just get better and better myself, and I wanted to be around musicians that were better than me.
What do you think?
Absorb that.
What do you think made you want to do that? Because at 17 and 20, at that age, I was in
laziness.
college. No, you seem to know what you wanted. I mean, most people be like, "Hey, man, I'm in a band. I'm 18. Yeah. I'm getting beer. Yeah. This is cool as shit." What do you think made you just want to get that drive? Was it an inherent drive? Did it come from your parents or?
No, it's funny. I was so oblivious to, a lot of people. It's so typical and cliche that people go, I got into it for the chicks and for the all that stuff. And I was all about the music. To me, it was like, it was lazy. I say a little bit it was laziness. And what I mean by that is I kind of looked at photography and I looked at that and I went, well, everybody's responding to my voice and I don't even know what I'm doing. But everyone's freaking out and saying, oh, my God, like, you got to hear this guy. This guy is amazing. And I'm going, wow, okay, well, I'm getting instant adulation and gratification for something that I've just been kind of doing as a hobby in my car for the past, couple of years. And, well, this seems easier, So I thought, well, it wasn't easier, not really. But in my mind, I just thought, well, I'm getting all this attention for something that that seems to be really easy for me to do, so why don't I just jump over and do that? Because photography is not an easy profession either. So if I'm going to be in the arts, maybe I should choose something that people are already telling me I'm really good at, So that was really my reasoning behind it. And then as far as the drive, well, once I realized that I loved it as much as I did, and I really did, and it was for me, again, all about the music. I mean, I just lived and breathed it. If I wasn't rehearsing, I was writing. I was listening to music. Everything that I did, every moment of every day was absorbing, listening, learning, rehearsing, writing, lyrics. I had notebooks and notebooks. I still have them. I have tons of notebooks with just, tons of lyrics in them. And so everything that I did, I even worked at a record store. Everything I did had to revolve around, the music. So, I don't know where the drive came from. There was just this urgency of, I've got to do this and I've got to be the best. And I don't even know what that means because now I look at music and I say, well, it's kind of weird. It's a weird thing to think, but I think coming from an athletic background like I did with surfing and skateboarding, I think in my mind, I was thinking I have to be the best. I want to be the best at this. And so I guess that was part of the drive. Now I realize that when it comes to art and music, there isn't really a best or a worst. It's really just a matter of you do your thing and other people do their thing, and it's different. It's not better or worse. It's just different. And some people think that Rod Stewart, or who I happen to love, or Mick Jagger are the best singers in the world, and other people think Rob Halford and Steve Perry are the best singers in the world. And so what I learned later in life was that, there is really no best. But that was my drive. My drive was go, 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 and get there as quickly as you can. And I don't even know why. I was young, so I didn't really have any understanding yet of the need for, it wasn't really, of course I wanted to make a lot of money, and I wanted to be successful, and I wanted to be, to do well, and I wanted to make my parents proud and all that stuff. But I just wanted to get there and get the prize. So I guess I just worked so hard in those 3 or 4 years from 17 to 21 when the TNT thing came along. and I'm probably getting ahead of you on questions here, but it was just kind of how that developed and fell together was also very strange, and you can ask me about that because I've been talking for a half hour.
Oh no, that's fine. No, I want to ask about TNT, but before I do, because I know it's because I read your bio. You're founder, and I just think it's something that you usually don't hear a guy in New York, hey, join a band in Norway. But I got to ask you because it said about can you explain the 4-octave and how do you find out? Is there like a test? Like sets you have a 4-octave? Because as I said,
I don't know if I have 4 octaves.
Well, that's what it says. That's what it says everywhere about you. It says you have 4-octave range.
But I mean, people throw that out there about everybody. Anybody that can sing high notes or low notes, that just seems to be the number they choose. And I've never. I don't recall when I started taking voice lessons, sitting down with my voice teacher, saying, "Okay, look, how many octaves can I sing?" To my
right.
And let's see what my lowest note is and what I never really cared or thought about that. That was something that other people were seemed to be more into than me. Was all I wanted to do was be really good. And the reason that I gravitated towards range was probably that when I first heard guys like Rob Halford or Ronnie James Dio or Geddy Lee. It was just very striking to me that, these guys were able to do all of this stuff with their voices. And maybe there was a connection to the opera thing with my mom, and maybe there was a connection to the athleticism of it. Because if you think about that kind of singing, it's very connected to opera. I mean, opera is extreme singing, and heavy rock singing is very extreme singing. And I think in my mind someplace I thought, well, if I could do it that way, if I could sing like Robert Plant or, Rob Halford or one of these guys, then it's worth doing. Like in my young brain, I felt like, well, if I could just sing like an average dude and just be like another one of these normal pop singers with maybe a nice voice or something, that's okay and all. But if I could be this crazy, wild thing, if I could do something crazy with my voice, then that would be worth pursuing, I guess, So I remember one day, I was trying to break through on my own before I ever went for lessons, and I was singing to, I think, a Zeppelin song, and something popped open, and I listened so intently, because that's what I said, I was listening a lot, and I did. That's how I learned to do everything that I do, and it was watching and learning and watching and listening. And I tell people I work with and mentor, whenever they allow me to do so, that listening intently and learning how to listen in a way that I didn't know I was doing, it's just something I did naturally, is what got my voice to open up. Is I listened so closely and carefully to what these guys were doing that somehow I was able to figure out how to take my voice from what it was, where it would stop, to past that point and figure out how to use my entire range. And the day it happened, I was in my mom's apartment in Queens, and it popped open, and I went, oh my God, I figured it out. And I just kept doing it. I think I did it for 4 hours until I couldn't speak anymore, but I never forgot how to do it after that. Every day I would go back and check again and go, yeah, that's how I do it. That's how you do it, and it just got better and better from there until eventually I did go for lessons when I was about 18 and figured out what I was doing. And why and how and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think about things like range and stuff. I mean, I love that I have it, and I know people are impressed by it, and it makes people go, ooh and ah. But for me, the best thing about having those notes is for expression. It's just it gives you another avenue to express the art in a way that you couldn't do maybe if you had a lower register. But, in saying that, some of my favorite singers don't have big ranges, and they've learned how to express themselves in very emotional, deep ways, maybe because of their limitations. So you also have those kinds of singers who have big ranges that are really boring to listen to because they've got so much range that all they're doing is being rangy all the time.
Right.
And then there's just no vibe or emotion or soul coming through. And that's also an issue. So I always tried to take both and have as much soul as I could while using the notes, if that makes any sense.
So how did TNT come about? Because you mentioned that. Now that was the band. I mean, you were in New York. I believe it was 1984.
Yep, that was the year.
And so what happened? What was and what was that like? And you're sitting there because, as you said, you're jumping from band to band, and basically it's as when I used to do stand up comedy, we call it's stage time. You're perfecting your craft. You're moving up, and doing things. So how did this event happen? And overall, it changed your life.
Well, I had gone through a succession of bands very quickly. When I left Philadelphia, I came back to New York, and I immediately got right on the horse and started to jump into bands. And I actually joined a band. I actually joined a band once that I really didn't think was a good band on purpose because they were playing clubs I wanted to be seen in. So I felt that they were just good enough that I wouldn't look stupid. But maybe, just maybe, I'd get seen, by the right people, and that's how I look back on it. And I go, how was I so smart then, and how am I so dumb now? Because, but I would do things like that, and I won't mention the band because they were really nice guys, and that absolutely worked. The strategy totally worked. I got from that band. We played all their sleeves and. Lemoore and all these great clubs, and from that gig I got recruited into a band called the Jackals, and that band included Johnny Tempesta, who's now with the Cult and who was in White Zombie and Rob Zombie for years, and Testament, and he went on to do very well, so he was in that band. I got recruited into that band, great guitar player, great bass player, and just a really good, solid metal band out of the Bronx. And we started to play a lot on weekends, rehearsed quite a bit. We all had, various jobs you have when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, record stores, messenger jobs, whatever we were doing. One night, we started to play every Friday night at this venue up in the Bronx, and we'd start to draw. We were drawing like 1,000 people. Nowadays, there are bands I know that have sold millions of records that have a hard time drawing 1,000 people to a venue. So we started thinking we were pretty hot shit, and we were doing mostly covers. We probably did about 2 or 3 originals, and we were building up that arsenal and writing more songs and demoing and stuff, but. And we had started to get some label interest, and there was a guy at Columbia that was interested in the band, and he was kind of courting us and taking us out to dinner, and fancy limousine nights and funny things like that were starting to happen. Well, one night we played Metal Night at the old Studio 54. It was on a Wednesday night, and these 2 guys come backstage after the show. One of them was Mike Varney, who you're probably aware of, and the other guy was just a local manager in Long Island who was working with this Norwegian band called TNT. And they came backstage with a tape. One side was their new record, Just Music. And the other side was the new record with the singer they were firing. And the offer was, here's the tape, listen to side 1 and side 2. If you like it, you're free to change things and do what you want to adjust the music to your voice. But you got to be in Norway within like a week or something. It was like a real quick deal, like make a decision and go. So I went home, and I was living with my bass player, and I went home, and he's like, and I didn't want to listen to it because he was, we were in a band together and we lived together, and he goes, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. He goes, you gonna listen to that thing or what? So I put it on, and Seven Seas comes blasting out of the speakers with Ronnie's beautiful sounding guitar. And in my brain, I'm just going, okay, this is exactly the kind of band that I want to be in and exactly what I've been looking for. What am I going to do? So I didn't say anything. And then, of course, my buddy, my bass player said, well, what are you going to do? And I go, well, it sounds pretty good. He goes, yeah, it sounds good. He's like, get your ass over to Norway. So he was cool enough to say that. And the band only had a deal there, though. They had a deal with a huge label. They were on Polygram at the time, which is now Universal, but only in Norway. So in my mind, I thought, well, I'll go do the record, and it'll be good for my band in New York. So I'll do the album. I'll come back. I said, guys, don't worry. I'll go do the album. It'll get us some attention. I'll come back, and we'll keep going. Well, we finished Knights of the New Thunder, which is what I went over there to do. I did most of the vocals in a week. I was doing about 2 songs a day. I spent about 4 days touching things up and rewriting things to fit my voice and so forth, and changing some things. I changed a lot, some things I didn't change much at all. And then they mixed it, and the guy at the label in Norway just started sending the record out to his affiliates around Europe and around the world, and within a month, all of a sudden it was coming out in Holland, and then it was coming out in Germany, and then it was being released in Japan, and it was just like one thing after another. And I think sometime around the end of the year of 84 or the beginning of 85, I can't remember exactly when it was, we get this big phone call from the head of A&R in New York City at Universal, at Mercury Records, and he wants to sign the band for a 3-album deal. And that's kind of how it happened. And of course, when things started to blow up, I never went back to the Jackals, obviously. And we just started touring, and then we got signed by Doc McGhee, and we were the 3rd band on his roster after Motley Crue and Bon Jovi. It was the 3 of us, 3 bands that he had, and of course we didn't get much attention from him because the other 2 were doing so well. So the relationship didn't last long, but that's how we got started, and that's when we were basically on our way. And well, that's the quick story told, I guess, in a very as short as I could tell it.
What was it like, though? Okay, so the metal scene was blowing up in LA, but you're over in Norway. Did you? And it's not like now where there's the internet and you can get, and hold everything. Did you know that the metal scene was blowing up over in the States? And what was it like when you first moved to Norway?
Well, I did, but I was kind of paying attention. I mean, it was interesting because when Motley Crue first came out with that first record with that iconic cover of Vince's torso with his with the belt and the whole thing, and my first thought was, wow, they look like all the bands I was in Philadelphia. Whether all of us were dressing that way in 1980, 79 and 80 and 81. We all had black hair and makeup and eyeliner, and we all looked exactly like Motley Crue. I mean, not exactly, but I mean, that was basically the look we had. We were all very glammy, tons of makeup, and we'd go out like that. We'd go to the mall that way, I knew something was happening. I'm guessing that if TNT didn't happen when it did, that I was 21 years old. I'm pretty sure my next move, if the Jackals didn't get signed within the next, 6 months or less, I'm pretty sure my next move would have been to go back to California. I'm just guessing that would have been what I would have done. And I don't say this in a cocky way. I'm pretty certain that had I done that, I would have found something out there that would have worked. And maybe would have been even more successful for me than TNT. And I love TNT. I love what we've achieved, and I'm proud of it, proud of all the records. But let's face it, we never really broke through outside of Japan and Norway, where we were huge. We never really broke through, in America the way I would have liked to have seen us break through. We came close. And I have a lot of stories I can tell and reasons I can say about why it didn't kick up to the next level. And some of that has to do with the band, some of it has to do with management, some of it has to do with the label. But we were right on the edge. It was real close, and it just didn't quite get there. But
well, give me your insight on why that didn't happen, because I know as I was reading, it's like overseas. You're right. You guys sold more in the Michael Jackson CDs. Like you guys were like in Scandinavia, where you were giant. I mean, what's that like to be? You were the rock stars of that area, and because you were not you, but the rest of the band was from that area, it probably escalated a lot. What's it like to feel that kind of popularity in a country that's not known for music? I mean, it must have changed your life, and you must have lost a lot of privacy.
But that's the funny thing. It is known for music, and I didn't know that till I got there. What a big music scene there was in Scandinavia, because when I got there, all of a sudden, I'm exposed to Europe. Oh, there's this great, incredible Swedish band called Europe, and there's, there's all of these bands, and they're in Norway, they're in Sweden, they're in Denmark, and I'm getting turned on to all this music, and I'm going, wow, what a bunch of amazing bands there are over here. Yngwie Malmsteen was already on his well on his way. And Finland had, Hanoi Rocks and some other bands up there too. So I actually came to learn that there was a giant music scene over there. Germany, of course. A lot of my favorite bands were German, except Scorpions, and of course England, always England. But no, Scandinavia, I was blown away. I was like, wow, like there are so many musicians here, and they're so good. So many good ones in one small place, Ronnie is a great example of a kid who grew up, very strict schooling where, if you're going to be in music, you got to study classical music. You got to learn everything. So when you get these musicians over there, they really know their stuff. They've been studying classical music. They were, beaten over the hand with a stick. You play your piano and you learn those chords and you learn, and Ronnie's got that background. And that's why when you listen to TNT, it may sound to some people like cheesy, simple pop music. But if you dig in a little bit deeper, if you're a musician or if you have a good ear, you hear a lot of things going on between he and I and the melodic stuff that's going on with the chord structures and the arrangements and the way that the melodies fit over the chords and into the chords, which I'm not sure any other combination of singer and guitar player could have done. Is it amazing to everybody? No. I mean, are they the greatest songs in the world? Maybe not, but it's definitely unique. And it's probably a combination of my upbringing in America with American music and opera, combined with his, European classical hard rock upbringing over there, whereas his favorite bands were Deep Purple and Rainbow and that kind of stuff, more the classical type of hard rock. My favorite bands were more, Zeppelin and Queen and stuff. But we meet in a lot of places. Both of us love Queen. Both of us love the Beatles, and Journey. And he really loves a lot of the American bands like Journey and Foreigner and Aerosmith and Boston and stuff like that. So his love of that kind of American music and my love for the European stuff is what really brought us together and made the whole thing work.
Why do you think the popularity in Japan? And I've heard Japan fans are insane. Like Carmine Appice was on, and he said he's huge. And so many artists are huge in Japan, and the people know all the lyrics. Right?
It's a funny cliche.
But it's true though. What do you think that made you guys? And what was it like playing in Japan? What kind of crowds would you play to in Japan?
Oh my God! Well, the funny thing about it was we were kind of like, what's going to happen with Intuition? Because it was the follow-up to Tell No Tales. Tell No Tales was like, the big stepping stone album in America, and it was number one in Norway for, in fact, you can go back in time and look at charts nowadays with the internet. You can actually look at the year 1987, and you can see the Norwegian pop chart, and you can see us dancing between number one, number two, number three, and we're kind of going up and down for about, I don't know how many weeks it was. It might have been a 6 to 8 week period. And we're moving back and forth with Michael Jackson and a couple other things that were big at the time. Mostly it was Michael's album, and I think it was Bad. And it was like TNT would be number one, and then the next week he'd be number one, and then we'd be at number one again. And 10,000 Lovers was also number one in Norway. So, sorry, I totally lost your question there. Say that, what was it like in Japan? So the thing about Japan is we felt like we had to follow up Tell No Tales with something even bigger. We needed to make it big in the States. We almost got there with Tell No Tales, in the U.S. You said elaborate on that. My feeling is if the label had put out one of the ballads, if we had released maybe Northern Lights as a single and a video, or that's the one I really think would have done it, and then we probably would have had a gold or platinum album in the U.S. and everything would have changed. But instead they took us off the road and put us back in the studio. So that's what we did, and we thought, well, this is the one that's going to really matter now, is Intuition. So we changed everything. Our producer got digital tape. We were the only, as far as I've been told, the second band after Def Leppard to record an album on digital tape. I think they did Hysteria digitally, and we were doing Intuition digitally around the same time frame as they were doing that one. So what happened was we came over to the U.S., did exactly what we did the year before, started in California, made a video for Tonight I'm Falling. Intuition. Made a video for Intuition, and then started our first headlining tour of large clubs and small theaters. And we started at the Palace in L.A., and they told us we were the first hard rock band to sell it out. And the whole tour across the U.S. was sold out in places that were anywhere from, I guess, I don't know, on the small end, maybe 750, and on the high end, maybe 2,000 or 3,000. There was a couple places on the East Coast that I know. One of them was about 3,000 people. And everywhere we were breaking attendance records, and it seemed like everything was going the right way, and the next natural step would have been to jump on an arena tour again and open up for somebody like we had done in '87. Well, somewhere around the end of the tour in America, we got a call from our manager saying, well, your album is blowing up in Japan, and it's not even on the rock charts, it's on the pop charts. It's like top 10 on the pop charts in Japan, and we're going, oh my God. So they put a tour on sale in places that were between, I guess, between 5,000 to 7,500 people per venue. Tokyo, I think we did 2 nights in a row, and the tour sold out in 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was about 7 or 8 shows, and it sold out in 30 minutes. And so we were like, wow, this is crazy, So we get there and we get out, we come off the airplane, and there's hundreds of kids at the airport. And we're just like, okay, this is really bizarre, And we thought, good, okay, finally, it's something's happening, It gave us a kick in the ass. And then we left Japan, and it just kind of fell apart. It just started to fall apart. The label in the U.S. wasn't happy. The album sold just as well as it did the previous album had done, but they obviously wanted it to do better. They weren't really behind. I think we came back and did one more video for Tonight I'm Falling, and then they kind of lost their faith in the band. So our manager very, very smartly put a new deal together quietly with Atlantic Records, and we orchestrated leaving Mercury on a Friday and signing with Atlantic the following Monday. So we had a new lease on life there, and we unfortunately made a big mistake with the Atlantic album and took way too long to make it with the wrong producer. Didn't come out until '92. We started recording in 1990. By that time, Nirvana had come out, or came out soon after our record or just beforehand, and we were just too late. Had we made the record quickly and efficiently and got it out by 90 or 91, we would have beat the grunge thing by a little bit and probably had a hit on that Atlantic album, because we had a couple of I think really good songs on that album, and maybe would have had another shot. And then we went to Japan and we had a huge tour again in '92, and then we came home and that's when we sort of called it a day for the first time, because we've called it a day a few times.
Right.
We've gotten back together each time. But,
What did you call it a day? Is it out of frustration sometimes, because you're right on the precipice of blowing up, and it's not like you're a band that couldn't draw. You're playing venues, you've made albums, you've had success, but you never took that next step. Is it just something that after a while you just get frustrated and you go, you know what, maybe we should cool it off for a while?
I think we all were. I think all of us were frustrated. I think our egos were out of control. I think that we had gotten so big in a couple of markets that we had delusions of grandeur about who we were and how much success we really had. Of course, me being American, I was very frustrated about the lack of success over here. So for me, it was like I could go to a rock club. Everyone knew who I was in the U.S., but I suppose that fed into my problem a little bit, was I'd walk in and get in for free everywhere, and everybody would be buying me drinks. So I guess I thought, well, I am a rock star, but I wasn't a rock star at all, but not over here. It was a huge mistake, because what the smart bands did, and I can rattle off quite a few, is they said, okay, fine, the music has died everywhere but Japan and Europe. So what they did is they just said, screw it, and they closed it down over here, and they put all their energy and their focus and attention on Europe and Japan. And I swear to you, had we been smart enough or had good enough management or direction from somebody to say, guys, this is what we should do. Let's just put all of our eggs into Japan and really just keep going and build up that market like crazy, and play, continue in Europe and do this and that, do what we can. We would have been millionaires. And I say that without any hesitation, because I know people who did it. Yngwie Malmsteen was smart enough to focus 100% on Japan, and he was getting $1 million record deals and selling out bigger and bigger places. So did Mr. Big, and a handful of other bands came out of nowhere from Scandinavia and went to Japan and became huge there, like Royal Hunt, and there's a few other bands I can think of that really meant nothing outside of Japan, but they took advantage of the fact that the Japanese audience, they were just getting started with this stuff. As America was winding down, they were like nuts. They were like, come on, let's go. And we were poised, and they loved us so much that we could have literally been like the Queen of Japan or something, and we just didn't have good direction. We weren't being given good advice, and we were all so frustrated that we didn't see the potential of how much money we could have made and how well we could have done by simply focusing on that market. And, the guys that did it, they were there for maybe a couple months, not even, maybe 1 or 2 months a year, and they'd get these big record deals. So they were really spending just very little time, and they were surviving, and they were also building up markets like Germany. So you had bands like Manowar that was over in Germany when the whole thing died, just making tons of money as all these new rock festivals were starting to be developed in the 90s. All these new things were happening. So we could have done all that, and instead we just said, oh, screw it, and we went our separate ways and let our egos get the best of us, and kind of dumped something that could have been really amazing. Because Queen did the same thing. They were smart enough when their popularity waned in the U.S. They in the 80s they started building up Europe again, and they built up South America and Japan, and said, you know what, if America's not happening, then we won't go there for a while. We'll wait until it is again, and we'll go other places. So live and learn.
now you guys broke up, you got back, you broke up, you got back. Now it's your 30th anniversary tour coming up, or?
Yeah, we've already started it in January. Everything was sold out over in Norway, which honestly, people say, oh, well, of course it was, but it's not really like that. And it's, believe me, it's not easy to sell out anywhere. And yeah, they weren't giant places. They were, mostly 1,000 to, I think the biggest one was 1,400 people. But I hate to say it, but like I said earlier in this conversation, it's hard for anybody to get that many people to show up and pay good money, to get into a concert. And believe me, ticket prices are very high over there. So I feel really proud, because we've toured there 3 years ago, 2014, we did a pretty extensive tour in Norway, and not every show was sold out. Most of them were, not everyone. So it doesn't always happen, and it's not always automatic. So I was worried. I'm like, is it going to go well this time? Are people going to still care? I was deathly afraid of half-filled venues. And so to get over there and really see the fans come out in droves to see us, and then also play well, and get a good buzz going on the band again was really wonderful. So what we're doing now is we started recording our album. We started writing, I should say, in May, and then we started to kind of record little by little towards the end of the year. And we did that tour to warm up for the Monsters of Rock cruise, which the band unfortunately didn't end up making because our guitar player got so sick he couldn't make it over, Ronnie. So now we're back to recording. So we're going to spend March and April trying to wrap up this new album, and then we hit the road again in May. And it looks like we're going to fill up the year pretty much from May throughout the end of the year. That's our goal anyway. We'll do a lot of festivals over there, and a lot of our own shows. People ask me, and because I know this is probably coming anyway, when are we coming to the States? It's a very difficult thing to explain to people, but it's not for lack of trying. We've reached out to several agents, and we've got some strategies put in place to do it properly. We've got, between the band, which is 5 people, including our keyboard player, and our crew, which is even our small crew is 3 people. So that's 8 people that we've got to minimally, usually it ends up being more, but minimally 8 people we've got to carry around the world, and it's not logistically as easy as you might think. And even though we've got more fans in America, believe it or not, than we do any place else in the world, they're spread out. So what we've got to try to figure out very strategically with a good agent is when we do come over, where are we going to play? What markets are we going to focus on first to kind of rebuild this thing over here? And do we do festivals and only festivals, or do we do both? Do we do some festivals and do our own shows? So we're trying to figure all that out. We wanted to get over here this year, but I have a feeling 2018 is going to be when we finally get back over here and do some proper shows.
I want to ask you also, okay, so now you're working on new material, you're recording.
Yep.
You guys have been together for so long, you've broken up, you've gotten back, you've broken up. How does your songwriting style change? And does that come into your writing that you've had, frustration? Does that all come into the writing, or is it just the same old, you're writing from the same old place you did, and because you guys get together?
No, and anyone who's really followed TNT, because I know we've got peripheral fans. We've got fans that really only remember Tell No Tales or 10,000 Lovers or maybe a couple songs off Intuition, and that's kind of their view of TNT. But and maybe a little bit from Knights of the New Thunder. So those first 3 records are mostly what I'd say the majority of TNT fans, or maybe at least 50% of them, are all about those 3 records. But if you really, if the other 50%, or maybe I don't know what the percentage is, they know that we've been recording and writing a lot of other music since those days, and every album's different. And as we evolve and as we grow, we put out different kinds of music, and that's what we probably will continue to do. And I think that people who really know the band, probably a lot of them are frustrated that we don't go back to that original style and try to duplicate what we did. I think the closest we came was My Religion, which is my personal favorite record that we've ever done. That came out in 2004. Unfortunately, it didn't get a lot of attention in the U.S., but it did really well for us in Europe and Japan and other places. It charted quite well in Scandinavia, and I'm real proud of it. It had a lot of songs on it and a lot of good songs, and we spent a good amount of time, and we were very, very focused making that album. So that's my personal favorite. I highly recommend it to any TNT fan that's maybe fell off, lost us for a while. If they want to kind of, get reconnected to the band, My Religion from 2004 is a good way to reconnect a little bit. But we've tried a lot of things. We went into some very different directions in the late 90s. We did 2 albums that a lot of people were not sure what to think of, because they were so different than what they were used to hearing from us. So My Religion kind of brought us back to a little bit of the older style mixed with where we had gone forward with. And then we came back with All the Way to the Sun in 2005, which which is kind of an extension of My Religion. It's a little bit more contemporary than My Religion, but still had that classic TNT sound. Where will we be today based on what we've been writing so far? I never really know what a record is going to sound like. I know that may sound funny, but I really never know what a record's going to sound like until we start to get to the mixing phase, and until I start to hear more rough demos, or more rough mixes, rather, of what we're recording. So right now, what I've mostly got to go by is what we've written. And yeah, a lot of stuff's been recorded, but I just can't quite say yet what this record's going to sound like. Is it going to be eclectic? Very. Are there going to be songs that remind people of old school TNT? I hope enough. I hope there's enough. But no, to answer your question honestly, I never like to go back. When people say to me, why did you cut your hair? Or I grow it, I cut it, I change my image all the time. I mean, I can pull up pictures of myself from 3 years ago, and I had a full beard and hair down to my shoulders, and now I've got short hair again. And then 5 years before that, it was short, and then it was long. And people say to me, "Well, why don't you grow your hair back, or why don't you make a record like Tell No Tales again?" And I kind of think to myself, well, why don't you go back to the wife you were married to 20 years ago and put your spandex back on, or go back and put your old jeans on from 1988 or something. I mean, it's hard to go back in time mentally and in every other way, because I don't think like I did in 1987 or 86, and so my lyrics won't be the same. I would like to think they'd be a lot better, because I've lived a lot more life than I had at that point. So, I like to grow and evolve. I think sometimes one of the things that frustrates me about being in the hard rock genre is there just seems to be less growth rate allowed by not just the fan base, but by the I'm a hard rock fan. I listen to hard rock. I want the new AC/DC album to sound like old AC/DC just as much as everybody else does. But when I look at other forms of music, I just see the ability to try things. Whether even in the pop world, I mean, you can see a lot of these new pop artists. Man, they're bouncing all over the place these days, trying different things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if they're big enough, the pop fans seem to be sort of allow them to experiment and try stuff. And I can even see that when I look back to Queen. When they made that first album, The Game, in 1980, everybody was like, oh my God, what are they doing? A disco album? Oh, no, Right. But sorry, looking back on it, Another One Bites the Dust was one of their biggest hits.
Exactly.
Cool. So I like to think that we could be allowed to do that. Look, in all honesty, we didn't get big enough to get that we have any sort of hall pass in that regard. We don't necessarily, but then again, maybe we do. Maybe the fact that we weren't big gives us more flexibility and more more freedom. Exactly. I don't know.
All right, man. Well, you know what? God, the hour flew. You have great stories, man. I want to thank you for coming on. I'm glad we got to do this. Now, your website is TonyHarnell.com.
Yeah, it's not much of a site, but what I will say about it is from that website they can find everything. They can find my Twitter page and my Facebook page, and they can also get to my online store where they can buy merchandise. So from there, and they can see tour dates.
Cool.
So from there they can find out what's going on with
cool.
me.
Well, people, check it out. Go to TonyHarnell.com, TonyHarnell.com. Also go to my website, CooperTalk.net. I have over 590 episodes up there. You can email me, Cooper@CooperTalk.net. Tony talked about Twitter. I tweet a lot.
Yeah.
Follow me. What's your Twitter?
Follow me on Twitter too. Twitter, Facebook, yeah.
Follow him on Twitter. Follow everything. Follow me on Twitter @CooperTalk. Instagram, I'm CooperTalk1 because someone else took Cooper Talk, and I just post a lot of just show promotion and stuff like that. And I post pictures of my food because my cookbook, StopTheSalt.com. Go to that site. Remember when I had the heart problem? I did a cookbook, 120 low-sodium recipes. Easy to make. No pictures to intimidate you. No long ingredients. You can get it at Amazon.com, but if you get it at StopTheSalt.com, I make more money. So get it there. So people, please go to coopertalk.net. Email me, Cooper at coopertalk.net. Creative Stupidity PR. Go to TonyHarnell.com. Check out TNT. Go buy the albums because, I bet he still makes a little cash if you buy the albums. And people, we all want to make some cash. So keep listening to Cooper Talk. Follow Tony. Follow out Cooper Talk. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next week.